time has come. We're gonna pull out that motherboard, old friend, and we're gonna make you stronger than you've ever been. Are you ready to be upgraded, old friend? Hey Gear Seekers, I'm Nick. Yep, it's the return of the custom water-cooled editing PC with quick disconnects. It's a 5-part series that I did towards the end of last year and earlier this year, and it's looking a little bit bare inside. That's not by any type of coincidence, ladies and gents, because you guys know what I'm like. I like to upgrade things periodically. And if you watched some of our Threadripper Pro stuff that we did with testing M.2s and some of our motherboard overviews, you would know that we have a Threadripper Pro CPU and some Threadripper Pro motherboards. I'm going to be rebuilding my editing PC again, this time with Threadripper Pro. The difference here is I've got the motherboard in here already. I've been testing this for about a month or so to see what the deal was. Now I'm ready to start putting it together. So here's a new series building my Threadripper Pro editing workstation, but this is gonna be a bit more vloggy than usual because this part I wasn't even gonna film because there's only a couple things I need to do to get this ready and get it prepped, right? The first thing I need to do is swap out the power supply. So I've got a 1200 watt one in here, going up to 1300 watts just because, and it's just gonna be easier for cable management and that kind of stuff. And we've got 2 GPUs coming for this. And I'm pretty sure you guys know what GPUs they're gonna be. There's gonna be 2 of them in total. We actually need to pull the board out again because I didn't put the IO shield in with this Gigabyte board. And yeah, there's a few little maintenance things we've got to do to get this ready. So this one is gonna be a little bit educational. Bindi, we didn't even have you when we started this whole Threadripper custom water-cooled journey. Can you believe that, Bindi? You didn't even exist in our lives. And yet, if you look at this, right, she sits basically every single day while I'm filming on that table watching me. So if you ever wonder why I'm looking away from the camera, it's because she's basically stalking me and watching me. But all of this feels like deja vu to me. We're here again doing all of the Threadripper things. This time, obviously, it's Threadripper Pro. Like I mentioned, I've been testing this for a little while, seeing what the go was, and I noticed that I kind of need to change this power supply. It's doing some weird things, which is one of the reasons why I haven't been using it. And because of the way this board's designed with additional PCIe power up near the 24-pin power connector, I might as well, you know, 2 birds, 1 stone it, pull out the power supply and the motherboard and everything and just do it all again properly. I guess what we need to do now that everything's unplugged is get that motherboard out of the way. What do you reckon? What do you reckon, Binny? I'm not gonna pull the water block off because, you know, quick disconnects. I'm just gonna save myself a bit of time here. If you haven't seen something like this before, we've done a whole series on how we put this thing together, but basically the idea is if you're new here, to disconnect the water cooling, we just go like this. And then the water cooling is disconnected. This water block is not coming off the CPU because it requires a lot of thermal paste. I don't want to have to reapply it in the meantime. Now, one thing I had to do to modify this case was I had to pull a bunch of the standoffs out and move them around because this motherboard only has 6 screw holes and they're right on the edges and they're in different spots to a regular ATX board because this is a CEB board. So what I did is the center peg that usually holds the board in place, I moved to over here and I had to pull out the middle ones and all that stuff. So you get the idea, but the RAM is temporary. I've got more RAM for this coming, but this is just like 32 gigs of stuff that I know works on here. It's Samsung B-Die. Out goes the Threadripper Pro and the motherboard, and we're gonna put in the IO shield and power supply. Oh, come on, try and do this one-handed. That was really stupid. Can we do this? There it is. That's what we need. That's what we need. There's no way I can rip that with one hand. This used to be my favorite bit growing up building PCs, pulling out the IO shield. I don't know, there was just something about it. They have that new computer smell as well. Threadripper Pro, dual 10 gigabit Ethernet. Haven't installed an IO shield for about, I don't know, a day. Yesterday's tough board that I used for that review had an IO shield just like this. Oh, I hate this. This is where the finger slicing usually happens when building PCs. The finger slicing has greatly reduced over the years of not having to have these anymore. As I would usually say, Bob's your uncle, it's in. Well, let's give you a peek behind the curtain of how this cooling system works if you haven't seen the original series. This is how it all works, right? There's a lot of stuff that you can't see behind the scenes, like thermal probes and all the stuff to let me know what's going on in the system. This has been modified too. I dremeled that so it's shorter so all the water cooling gear would clear. This HX1200 has got to go. This one's been really weird and I have a 1300 watt I'm pulling off the test bench. Most of this needs to be redone. Well, all the power stuff needs to be redone anyway because it's all over the place, but it is what it is, you know, you just gotta do it, you know, you just gotta go and do it and give it a right old crack, you know. Some power supplies, they have this sleeving, yeah, it's cool, but then they have this right at the end and look, you can't bend or maneuver that and that annoys me. And because this system is a system you never look at, it doesn't need to be pretty, but it needs to be practical. And that there is probably the least practical thing about this power supply. It's about time I did a bit of maintenance on this thing, but yeah, power supply, it's gotta go. Urgh! Why Molex? Again, why Molex? How high are you? Yes, high pot. Okay. Yeah, I have the mind of a child. Okay, here we go. 80 plus, platinum. This power supply has been living on the test bench for all GPU testing. I never wanted to change a power supply on this because it is kind of a pain in the ass to do, but after all of the experiences I've had so far with this, it was time. Power supplies in. Wow, this is the worst video ever. We bless you with the power of Threadripper Pro as the motherboard goes back in. This time with an IO shield. Look at that, that single peg that I added back in there holds the board in place, comes in clutch. The motherboard is already back in, how good's that? This is already looking better, and the only reason why I'm saying that is because there's no cables. Stupid guy. This is another reason for changing the power supply as well. So you can see that all of the power for the motherboard is on this single edge, because this is actually really a server motherboard. This one here is an 8-pin EPS, regular 24-pin power connector, and this is a PCIe power connector, and you can see that the tab is on the other side, so the connector rotated. Now, the power supply I had before, I didn't have provisions for this connector here. This actually needs to be plugged in to supply all the power to all the slots on the board. I kind of like that this all lines up nicely too. So we're going to make this as clean as possible. Also, if we need to swap the board out at any time, it's going to be easier to plug it back in. First up, we've got that PCIe power connector. This one goes up the top. These are much easier to plug in than the last power supply I had, mind you. This one can go like that, 24-pin power connector. And then last but not least, the EPS power connector, which is actually flipped down there. It may look messy compared to our regular builds on the channel, but to me, that looks absolutely divine. Everything's plugged back in now. There's a bit of cable management to do on the backside that I'll probably do with you guys as well, but I had to run up some GPU power cables for the 2 GPUs that are gonna eventually live in here. But for now, I'm not gonna transplant any hardware yet because I still wanna do some testing and whatnot. Hopefully we get the sound of the click. Ooh, ooh. Actually, not looking like there's much to clean up. I didn't have to cut any of that stuff out or anything. I could kind of stretch everything to make it fit how it was before. This is fine, this is all good. Pop this cover back on. It hides all of the mess and that allows the back panel to go back on, no problems. And Bob's your uncle and I don't know, Clarice is your auntie, I don't know. I feel like I'm finally making progress on this Threadripper Pro stuff, which is good. Right. Maybe. A duck. It actually smacked me in the face. That's basically it. I just wanted to hang out with you guys while I redid a little bit of this work. Usually stuff like this I won't film, but you know what? Hang out with me today, learn something, or maybe don't learn something. If you're interested in seeing how this system works with the quick disconnects, I walked through how I modified every part of this case to make it all work. It's a really interesting loop if you want to build yourself a professional workstation. We get comments a lot of the time, oh, that's like the ugliest loop I've ever seen, Claire. You know how people say that, oh, it doesn't even look that good. It's not supposed to look good at all. It's supposed to be super functional, easy to maintain, and that's exactly what it is. I've got 2 GPUs coming. I'm not saying what they are until they arrive. Both are gonna have water blocks on them and both plug straight into the manifold already. So yeah, it's gonna be really easy. So it's kind of an extension of the original series where we water cool the GPUs as well. And this, you're gonna ask why 2 GPUs? Yeah, you'll see, you'll see. Well, it's gonna be the coolest thing you've ever seen. So I'm gonna do all the thermal testing for the whole system. Something that we kind of touched on when we did the original one with the CPU only stuff, because it didn't work out the way we wanted when we originally did this. And I've got new RAM arriving, and that's mainly it. This will be my permanent editing PC. And as I said, when we did the water-cooled loop for the other editing PC that I've been using, that system has always been pretty temporary. This is the one that I was using. And then if you remember back to the series, if you'd seen it or not, the Threadripper board I had died. They replaced the board. It was all up and running. Then I started having problems with the power supply. So I just couldn't win with this system. But now, after me testing this CPU and this setup for so long, and now with testing this motherboard and this actual power supply on a test bench as well, I know that this is gonna work sweet. And I've done thermal tests and everything with this loop and this Threadripper Pro, and it's been super stable. But just quickly rattling off, it's the Threadripper Pro 3975WX, so it's the 32 core, and the motherboard is the Gigabyte WRX80SU8 IPMI. I've done a full overview of this board already, so if you're interested in having a closer look at what makes Threadripper Pro different from a platform perspective, that video might actually give you a little bit of help as well. I've also done some storage videos where we did RAID 0 on some of these new faster 7000 megasecond M.2 drives. I use this board for all the testing, so I'll put all of that stuff in the description if you guys are interested to see what we've done with this so far. I opted not to use the Asus board that we've got, the WRX80 Asus board. I'm getting another Threadripper Pro to do a build with. That's gonna be a bit crazy as well. But the reason why is because that board is a lot bigger than this board. So that board comes out to about here. So it's got the standoffs for it, but I can't pass the power cables through for it. So it didn't really make sense to do it in this case. That's the only reason why we didn't go with the, wherever it is, the Sage up there. So we will be doing something with the Sage really, really soon, because we've got another CPU coming. Yep, but that's basically the meat and potatoes of this video. If you liked it, smash the like button. I'll put links to the whole series again of how I put all this together. Maybe you learned something, maybe you didn't. Already said all that, blah, blah, blah. If you like the music, there's no music in this video, but I do make all the music on the channel. Patreon, you wanna get early access to videos just like this one right here, head on over to Floatplane and all that jazz, and I'll catch you next time. My name is Nick. This is a channel called Gear Seekers. You peek, and maybe we'll seek. Thanks for watching.